gore ba batla go tlhomamisa gore ba dumelane le wena mara go ka rega gore at that time bo seo and then how do they fill up that space
sure
so tsentse gore ga le gore ga ba go nne le plan B because go tla bo go na le vacant spaces tsa tsona
go nna teng
ka le tlhoka gore I'm ke bua fela ka radio now mo television
it's 10 times extra
so for you to maybe they go bua like 8
yeah so I understand that the drills it's I understand that.
Goal. Raymond Khalifa Wolf says, most definitely, fatigue is catching up on them. They look tired and there's no fighting spirit anymore.
I don't know, more fighting spirit hopefully throughout the course of the morning.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yes, I'm going to keep it going throughout.
Definitely, of course. All your news and sporting highlights coming up in just a bit. For now, though, let's have a look at your morning headlines. A former Eskom acting CEO, Mangope, will appear before the Eskom parliamentary inquiry this morning. ANC struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela has been admitted to the Mill Park Hospital in Johannesburg for a kidney infection. The live Esidimeni arbitration hearings resumed this morning after a day's break, with former Gauteng Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu to face more questions. And the memorial service for former Botswana homeland leader Kgosi Lucas Mangope will be held at his home village of Motswedi outside Zeerust in the northwest this morning. And Kendall Makamate is standing by with all of our sporting highlights. Kendall, what can we look forward to this Wednesday?
Quite a lot. Just a quick comment, and Kgosi Lucas Mangope, because of his role in history, a lot of divided opinions on whether it was good or bad for the people of South Africa. But in terms of the sports, here's what we've got for you today.
We've got a strong bowling attack on conditions that will suit them. So I think once again the onus would be on the partnerships in the batting department.
The Proteas look to rewrite history as they seek their first ever Test victory against the Indians at the Wanderers. And with that, their first series whitewash of the tourists starting today.
Pakistan, after a very tense struggle, have beaten South Africa by 3 wickets.
The baby Proteas lose their first Under-19 Cricket World Cup match to Pakistan in their quarter-final in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Now, at the other end here... Oh, my goodness! Can you believe it?
A last gasp goal by Puleng Tlolane earns Polokwane City a draw at the Lucas Moripe Stadium and breaks SuperSport United hearts with literally the last kick of the match. All this I've got in more detail at 10:40. Do stay with Shantae though, as she's got the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Having a look at your top story at 9 o'clock, a former Eskom acting CEO, Masekela, will appear before the Eskom parliamentary inquiry into state capture this morning. Koko's appearance comes after the utilities' former CFO, Anoj Singh, gave evidence yesterday.
From Glencoe.
Anoj Singh faced a tough grilling from lawmakers.
For the last 6-7 hours, all we've heard from you is, I don't know, ask so-and-so, these are the facts, I don't have any other facts. You've only been in the job for 2.5 years and you can't remember anything.
So I think with all due respect again, the one area that I said that it was difficult for me to respond to the questions was relating to the Horong transaction. The rest of the transactions that I was asked to prepare on, I think I've been able to provide a quite sufficient detail in terms of the analysis of the transactions that was requested.
Singh was also grilled on the 1.6 billion rand guarantee given to Degeta, a Gupta-linked company. Singh denied any friendship with the Guptas and their associates, and even denied they sponsored a trip to Dubai.
To whom is that invoice? It does bear your name, but if you look down there, it is addressed to?
Referring to company, then it's Sahara Computers.
Now, why would that invoice be directed to Sahara Computers and not to your common acquaintance?
So I'm not aware. I don't know.
Between trillion.
Lawmaker after lawmaker pleaded with Singh to come clean and expose the web of state capture. He stuck to his line that he knew nothing and was prepared to fight corruption. And in the end, a half-hearted apology.
To the extent that we have, or I have, in some way, shape or form contributed to the downfall of Eskom. I do apologize sincerely, not only to the committee, but to the citizens of the country by and large, but I have tried to do my best.
Pulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Former Gauteng Health MEC Qedani Mahlangu will face more grilling as the life Esidimeni arbitration hearings continue this morning. On Monday, Mahlangu was at pains to explain that she was not involved in the day-to-day operations, as this would have been against the law. She said the decision to terminate the department's contract with life Esidimeni was a cost-cutting measure led by a former head of department, Dr. Bani Selabano. Mahlangu told the arbitration that Life Esidimeni Selby Park had attracted negative comments from the Auditor General and that the contract had been renewed without following the supply chain year after year. As Mahlangu's cross-examination continues today, expectations are also high that Premier David Makura and Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi will take the stand soon. Well, ANC struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela has been admitted to the Mill Park Hospital in Johannesburg for a kidney infection. In a statement, the Mandela family says prior to being hospitalized, she was uncomfortable and complained of a loss of appetite and pain in one leg. The statement further says upon admission, it was discovered that she had an infection that had affected her kidneys. She is expected to spend approximately a week at the hospital. The family says Madikizela Mandela is in high spirits and she's constantly surrounded by family. The memorial service of former Botswana homeland leader Kgosi Lucas Mangope will be held this morning in his home village of Motswedi outside Zeerust in the northwest. 94-year-old Mangope, who was also a traditional leader, died last week at the Lehurutse hospital near Zeerust. Among those expected to address the memorial service are representatives from the Northwest Province government, as well as the legislature of the House of Traditional Leaders and the late Kgosi Mangope's colleagues who served in his cabinet in the former homeland. Well, members of the community from across the province are also expected to be in attendance. The memorial service is scheduled to start at 11 o'clock. Mangope's funeral service takes place on Saturday in his Motswedi home. For more on this, we are now joined live by SABC reporter Oleboheng Kgosi. Very good morning to you, Oleboheng. Essentially, what is going to take place at the memorial service this morning?
Good morning, Shante. We are at the Motswedi Community Hall where preparations are underway for the memorial service of the late Kgosi Lucas Mangope. But joining me right now to tell us more is Rebato Ing Mangope, who is from the Bahuru Sibomanyani Tribal Authority and royal family. He will be unpacking exactly what is to happen today. Good morning, Remangope. Today is all about remembering the late Kgosi. How will you remember him?
I will remember as a pioneer in many respects. He pioneered education in this after having succeeded his father. He took over the chieftaincy from 1959 to date. And during his tenure as a Kgosi, because he believed to do that, he did a lot of other things. And early in his political career, he met with Mandela, and Mandela tried to persuade him to join the ANC, but he chose to do it differently because, yes, we were under apartheid era, and it was very difficult for a black man to have a recognition. So he chose the path of the Bantustan, which unfortunately people do not see it in a proper perspective. But whatever he did was very, very good, and we are really proud of what he has achieved for us.
You talk about him being a pioneer. What legacy does he leave as Kgosi for the people of Motswedi and as the former president of Botswana?
He has left so many things, one cannot be able to articulate them in a short space of time. But, in 2002, the Marquis Productions decided to honor him for what he has done, and that is the who's who in the world. So they honored him, and they called him over to come and honor him. We've got that in history. We've got that it's documented actually. And another thing is, he pioneered education. Everybody should be remembering UNIBO and other institutions of learning. He started agricultural things. He started, he encouraged people to be able to help themselves rather than to sit back and allow the government to do things. And for that reason, wherever you go, even to date, because of the political turmoil in which we find ourselves, people always say, if only Mangope was here, if only his legacy was followed up, if only Mangope. So I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying this, because this is exactly what people see him as.
And as for the business of today, please kindly take us through what is to be expected today. Who are some of the people expected to come here today?
Today is his memorial service. We are very grateful to the local municipality and the government because they decided to do this. Now we are expecting people from municipality, we are expecting the mayor here, we are expecting people from the local government, we are expecting people from the local traditional house of the House of Traditional Leaders, we are expecting people from the Christian community, we are expecting people from all over the place. And it's going to start at about 11 o'clock, and we don't know, of course, when it's going to last. But this is what we are expecting. We are expecting the royal family to come here at about 10:45 and to be attentive. And we are very grateful for the municipality and everybody who decided to do this, because to us it means it means a lot. Actually, it's a milestone in our lives, because we are here to come and recognize and celebrate the life of a great man that he is.
Thank you, Mangope. Well, there you have it, Shante. It is expected to start at around 11 o'clock. Quite a number of people expected to converge here at Motswedi Community Hall. As for us, we will be here throughout the day bringing you the latest. It's back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, our reporter on the ground there for SABC, Oleboheng Khosilentwe. Well, moving on, he was someone who made music both a weapon against apartheid, but also as a mechanism to help South Africans cope with its injustice. So says a former Deputy President, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, after the passing of Afro jazz legend Hugh Masekela. The late trumpeter was a regular visitor to the United States, and in one of his final shows, there was among a star-studded lineup to perform during the International Jazz Day concert hosted at the White House.
It's a great honor to introduce a man who, in his 6-decade career, has used his instrument to create songs of protest that gave voice to an entire nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Hugh Masekela.
Introduced by Sting, performing the iconic Bring Him Back Home, and hosted by former President Barack and First Lady Michelle Obama.
I want to see you walking down the streets of South Africa.
He was a legend, someone who made music both a weapon to fight apartheid, but also a mechanism to help us cope as South Africans, because we enjoyed and we loved his music. We will also remember him as a role model for many musicians that came after him, who embraced both the art and purpose and the fight for a better South Africa.
Hugh was a regular in the Big Apple, seen here performing alongside Stevie Wonder at the inaugural International Jazz Day concert in the UN General Assembly in 2012. And then in 2014, when he visited to celebrate South Africa's 20th anniversary of political freedom, and this performance at Carnegie Hall. I also sat down with Hugh when he celebrated his 75th birthday in New York.
We're lucky that we had so much solidarity and that music was a catalyst, but sometimes people think that activism against injustice is the work of maybe liberation movements and artists, but it's the work of everybody. And again, you know, it was the people who freed us in South Africa, because without them, all the music and all the liberation moves didn't mean anything. It was the people who made South Africa ungovernable.
Simon Rentner is the host and producer of the Checkout on New York's Jazz Public Radio WBGO, and the organizer of last year's Jazz Epistles reunion with Abdullah Ibrahim that saw Hugh pull out after suffering a fall during a performance in Morocco.
It was going to be an absolutely historic reunion because, in my estimation, it was one of the most important jazz bands of the 20th century, and getting these two icons in music in the world, not just South Africa, together again for the first time in 50 years. We were this close, but yes, you know, life gets in the way sometimes.
Shocked by the news of Masekela's passing, but that his legacy is unequivocal.
Masekela would want the world to know that jazz was African first, not African American, but African with the emphasis on African, which was contrary to American belief and opinion. And the more that I learn about the music jazz, I tend to agree with him. Jazz is African, and Americans should reframe our way of thinking about this.
He was loved around the world. He never stopped talking about his love for South Africa. We will know that when he came to play here in New York, so many friends came to listen to him, people he went to school with, people he played with, and there was always a party with a purpose.
Hugh's main lesson to us would be, so soon after the passing of Professor Keorapitsi Khositsile:
excellence. We should shy away from mediocrity. These giants represent the best of who we can be as South Africans.
And this personal anecdote to a life well lived.
Nobody would give me a gig. And I came up with the hybrid that I came up with, which is like really based on like traditional South African big band dance music and heritage music, and it caught on. And I've been very fortunate. I've seen the whole world. I've been able to make a living at what I do, and I've been able to make a living talking about the people I come from, you know, and the legacy they gave me, because the music I play, I couldn't be able to play if I came from Japan. I probably would be a sushi chef.
SABC News, New York.
Let's have a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from Christo Thurston. Hugh Masekela was 14 when he started playing the trumpet. The 78-year-old legend has made jazz beautiful. Thank you and rest in peace, Hugh Masekela. Of course, that is our picture of the day. We will try get it up as soon as we can. Let's have a look at our comment of the day. This one comes in from TJ Maketa. Hugh Masekela was not celebrated enough. Few people know that he is the only African with a #1 song on the Billboard Hot 100, Grazing in the Grass in 1968. It sold more than 4 million copies worldwide. He was a legend among legends. Indeed, he was a huge loss to the South African music industry and, of course, the world over in jazz. Let's have a look at what's making headlines in our courts today. We'll start along the coast in the Western Cape. The bail application of suspected underworld kingpin Nafiz Modak and his 4 co-accused continues in the Cape Town Magistrates Court today. The case was postponed last week after the lead investigator, Charles Kinnear, fell ill. The 5 men are facing allegations of extortion and fraud linked to the Cape Town nightclub and restaurant scene. They are accused of terrorizing nightclub owners and demanding so-called protection fees of their establishments, totaling up to 90,000 rand per month. Kinnear says that men are dangerous and should not be released on bail. In the Eastern Cape, the bail application of a 30-year-old alleged Muti killer will resume in the Bizana Magistrates Court in the Eastern Cape. It's alleged that the suspect killed and beheaded a 17-year-old Sinoyolo Magaga at Nikiwe location in Bizana. Well, the suspect's first court appearance was last year in October, where he abandoned a scheduled bail application as he was scared of being attacked by locals. We will be keeping you updated on these and other court cases that are taking place in and around our courts. For now, though, let's take a short break here on Newsroom. Do stay tuned.
So the issue of waves is that don't underestimate yourself. You are exactly the cornerstone of the solutions we are looking for.
To go and intervene and make sure that people respect the Constitution.
Now, if drug dealers are paying political leaders, then you will never get rid of that problem.
We need to see detail that we will not see further bailouts.
Fidel, a towering figure of the 20th century.
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours. When life takes a different turn.
If I didn't eat the speak, he was going to evict me.
Your will to persevere is ignited.
I'm not a professional speaker, but I'll try my best to give you a word of inspiration.
He was just trying to provide for his family.
If you can't accept it, change it. If you cannot change it, accept it.
And a new story begins.
Made a resolve to myself. I'm learning something new.
Bupilong, every Friday at 5:30. Be part of the life-changing journey.
According to an Oxfam report, 82% of wealth generated last year went to the richest 1% of the global population, while the 3.7 billion people who make up the poorest half of the world saw no increase in their wealth. For more on this, we are joined by Head of Economics and Justice at Oxfam, Temikosi Dlamini. Very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Chantal.
Let's have a look at some of the reasoning as to why inequality in the world seems to be increasing, specifically in Swaziland.
Yeah, so the crisis of inequality is getting out of control across the world. But in poorer countries such as Swaziland and sub-Saharan Africa, the rising inequalities because of the unequal power relations between the workers on the one hand and the super rich on the other hand. So what is happening is that the super rich, the corporations, are trying as much as possible to try to reduce costs. And as they reduce costs, they tend to go towards cutting the wages that go to the workers.
Let's discuss the dynamics then between shareholders, corporate bosses at the expense of workers.
Yes, so what happens is that other than the remuneration that goes to corporate bosses, you find that they have share options and also bonuses that they earn. And these bonuses are structured such that they are a higher proportion of their annual salaries. So that becomes an incentive at the end of the day for them to try and as much as possible to force down the costs. And one of the ways that they force down the costs is to casualize workers and also to do a lot of outsourcing, where you find that a worker is now employed through a labor broker instead of directly by the company that benefits from their production.
Let's look at the factors around the billionaire boom, if one can call it that. 82% generating wealth out of the 1% of the billionaire generation. What is causing the boom?
Yes, one of the reasons why there is a boom is that now that more of the profits that come from production are accumulated by the wealthy, you find that they don't have to work harder or innovate or even have complicated strategies in business because they have wealth, and then there's also intergenerational wealth. For instance, we know that in South Africa you have the white minority that had a monopoly in industries. They have control over the government. When we talk about state capture, it's something that has always existed. It is something that is ensuring that generations of the whites continue to benefit from the wealth that has been accumulated previously. Now that there is a squeeze on wages, it means they are making more money without having to innovate or even have new companies on board themselves.
Mm-hmm. And now we see that in this boom, women still seem to be at the bottom of the heap. What are the contributing factors towards this, and what can actually be changed in this dynamic?
Well, one of the things that we have seen is that the legislation, as it were, doesn't favor equal pay between men and women. So one of the recommendations of our report is that we should take action to have legislation that closes the gender pay gap, as it were. But we've also seen that women tend to be employed in work where there is low pay. They're employed in work where it is precarious, it's unsure, and also in dangerous work, as it were. But also women are also expected to play a huge role in what we call unpaid care work. Mm-hmm. We have estimated that the total amount of $10 trillion is the amount of unpaid care work that women perform on a daily basis. For instance, in countries such as ours, where people still have to go and fetch water away from their household, they have to fetch firewood, they have to care for the children and the sick, they have to cook, they have to clean. All of those things are what contributes to women working more hours, working more harder, but being rewarded less.
Yeah, and I mean, we see that all over, not only in the working industry, we see that in entertainment all the time, making headlines that men significantly earn more than women. The other thing that I wanted to touch on here was by the end of 2017, it seems that the African billionaire, or the numbers there, had increased from 10 to 25. That's over a period from 2010 to 2017. Why is it taking so long for the billionaires to be billionaires in Africa?
Well, it is not taking that long for billionaires to increase in Africa. I mean,
how not?
If you can imagine that the poverty levels in Africa are worse off, and then when you look at the issues such as the level of development in Africa, the inequality, the poverty, and how Africa is lagging behind in terms of development, and the access to basic essential services such as education, health, and others. You know, so this is a demonstration again that the billionaires are having a good time in Africa, obviously at the back of the mines, the energy complex, and also the finance.
Okay, what were some of the other contributing or highlighting factors that you picked up during the study?
Well, one other issue that we highlighted was the issue of taxation. We do believe that the super rich are not being taxed adequately. So we think that the super rich need to be taxed more. For instance, we estimated that a 1.5% tax on billionaires' wealth would ensure that we have all children to go to school. But at the same time, they also employ some strategies to avoid paying their fair share of the tax through tax dodging and externalizing their profits. We have had Panama Papers, we have had Paradise Papers, all have demonstrated how the super rich and corporations tend to hide their wealth in tax havens. So what it means, the income that they earn, for instance, in South Africa, will be externalized such that they earn it somewhere outside of South Africa. Whilst in their books in South Africa, they will show that they have earned no income or very little income, so they reduce their tax. When that happens, there's little money that goes to public services such as health, and then the government has to go back to the workers to tax them more in order to find the money to bridge the gap.
Now, just briefly, Oxfam is calling for a people's economy that works for everyone. How do you think this can be implemented?
Well, if we can have a people's economy, we can be in a position to ensure that, for instance, when you talk about agriculture, we have a whole value chain approach where we are saying the smallholder farmer, who is the one who grows the crops and the one who milks the cows, get a fair share of the proceeds. What happens now is that you own the cows, you feed the cows, you do the milking. You get 350 for every liter of milk. But when we buy the milk at ShopRite and the shelf, we buy it for 15 rand. So already we can see that the bulk of the profit that comes from that production goes to the end of the chain, the retailers. That's why they are able to pay these outrageous wages to their top executives and also their shareholders.
Indeed, thank you very much for taking us through some of the stats of the study there and unpacking it. Head of Economics and Justice at Oxfam, Mr. Ntemekosi Dlamini, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at what's making headlines front and center around the globe. We'll start off in the United States this morning. In New York, the Financial Times reports that a journalist has revealed the shocking details of how young women were allegedly harassed and degraded while working as hostesses at a men's-only charity gala at Mayfair's Dorchester. In Australia, the Australian says a Queensland mother has been charged with murdering 2 of her adult children after an investigation into the deaths, which were previously thought to be suicides. And finally, in Namibia, the Namibian reports that the Social Security Commission's Chief Executive Officer, Milka Mangunda, has asked National Youth Council Chairperson Mandela Kapere to extend the delays in the implementation of a $2.5 million Namibian agricultural project near Oshakati. Let's have a look at what's happening on our Facebook page this Wednesday morning. Well, firstly, we'll start off with some students. The Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, says free funding for higher education will only be given to first-time undergraduate students. NSFAS CEO Stephen Zwane says they have received around 300,000 applications for funding for the 2018 academic year. And then we also see the death toll following a double car bomb attack in the Libyan city of Benghazi on Tuesday night has risen to at least 22, a hospital spokesperson has said. And finally, in the US, President Donald Trump is aiming to be the best salesperson for American economic interests when he goes to Davos later this week. This is according to the White House yesterday. Simply search the @SABC Newsroom on Facebook, follow us and interact with us, as well as on Twitter on @SABC Newsroom. For now, though, let's take a short break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, we continue paying a special tribute to Hugh Masekela here on SABC News. His career spanned more than 50 years, 30 of which were spent in exile. Hugh, as he was affectionately known, used to use music to make the world aware of the struggle for liberation in South Africa during the apartheid regime.
Deemed the father of South African jazz, it was in the small mining town of Witbank where a musical legend would be born. The 4th of April in 1939 marked the special day, the arrival of a music legend, Hugh Masekela.
Hugh Masekela wa batokwa wa ka Mangope. Ke rena ba roka ba metsi a pula ba kwena ba ga selakale ba pau ba ga tshwale bo mamotshepa ba boloko bo tlhabayana ka tša go ripjwa.
14, he was an inaugural member of the Huddleston Jazz Band under the guidance of apartheid activist Father Trevor Huddleston. From 1954, Masekela played music that closely reflected his life experiences and would later be influenced by the hardships of an oppressive regime.
No country has ever portrayed the power of music like the people in South Africa with their People's Revolution. It was just, it was difficult not to admire them.
By age 20, he was a member of the Jazz Epistles along with Abdullah Ibrahim. But his big break would come in 1958 when he scored a role in the musical King Kong. In 1960, at the tender age of 21, he left South Africa for London to study at the Guildhall School of Music.
I went to Conservatoire and I went to the Royal Academy and the Guildhall School of Music, Manhattan School of Music. And I spent 5 years in conservatories. There's nothing I don't know about Bach or traditional Zulu music.
A year later, he found himself exiled in New York. Here, US jazz legend Harry Belafonte took him under his wing while studying at the Manhattan School of Music. In 1962, Masekela released his first album titled Trumpet Africa.
The record company felt that this group I was with had been living here, so they felt that the South Africans were playing the music better than they'd ever heard it before.
He would later marry fellow South African Miriam Makeba in 1964, divorcing 2 years later.
The more, the phenomenon about Miriam Makeba especially is that she helped all the young artists out of South Africa and a lot of exiles, to get scholarship.
In 1990, he returned home to South Africa.
I was away for 30 years, and when I came back, most of the people I grew up were either so old that I didn't recognize them or they were not on the scene anymore.
Hugh has been awarded many accolades, including a 2013 Grammy nomination for the album Jabulani, and MTN honored him with the Lifetime Achievement Award. He has also been conferred with honorary doctorate degrees from York and Rhodes Universities and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. In 2010, President Jacob Zuma awarded him the National Order of Ikhamanga in gold for his exceptional contribution to music and the struggle against apartheid. Mangope Mchunu, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, in 2010, Hugh went public about his battle with drugs and alcohol, which he was addicted to from the late 1970s through to the 1990s. Fortunately, the jazz maestro managed to quit the habit. Let's have a look at the insert.
Jazz maestro Hugh Masekela is one of the last of a generation of artists who represent the crazy defiance of Sapphire Town, where shebeens were the subversive spaces where you spoke your mind and swigged your liquor and more often than not made your art. But alcohol abuse was as much a part of Kafifi life as was its creative defiance. And for us, part of the 50s legacy is a roll call of fallen heroes. Those who died because of the bottle: Kantemba, Nat Nakasa, Kipi Muketsi. Hugh has survived, but the fallout has been huge.
When you're down and out, they say, look at him, he's 8 Makarit, you know what I mean? And then there's, because addiction it goes with certain people's metabolisms. Some people can drink and go to work the next day, But I come from the category that won't go to work the next day, and if it's really like a crucial thing, I'll call a doctor and lie to him, and he'll say, hey, this guy is sick. And as soon as they call me and say, listen, we hear you're sick, I'm going, oh man, I'm in a bad shape. And I am in bad shape. As soon as they hang up, I call my dealer, and I go to the bottle store, and I have a free day to myself. Sometimes I wouldn't sleep for 3 or 4 days, and there was nothing at that point that I knew I wanted more than sobriety, which I hadn't had in over 40 years. But by November last year, very few of my really close friends were talking to me. Like my partner, Stuart Levine, who produced all my records, and stopped talking to me in 1985 and said, I want my friend back. But last year around July, my sister just said, and I don't know you, I want my brother back, and soon I was like in the very lonely lane where I was just alone. When you get straight, miracles start to happen because you are there to answer the calls, and if like a few more people answer the calls, I think that it would become a better place. But I'm not here to open a church, evangelize. And a lot of professional people like counselors and certain doctors are very keen to come and help. And a lot of people who are closet recovering people who were hiding that they are recovering people want to come out and help get this foundation together so that a lot of our talent, and just our youth especially, shouldn't go the way we've gone.
It is day 2 of former MEC Health, Kodali Mahlangu's testimony at Parktown in Johannesburg. Let's cross live to the Esidimeni arbitration, where she is set to take the stand for the 2nd time this week.
There is also a blow-by-blow response to the questions in form of a memorandum by the HOD in the letterhead. There is also a report by Dr. Manamela. After the transfer, the report talks about the live Esidimeni termination project from the beginning. It talks about the challenges, it talks about the transportation, it talks about the support that was given to the NGOs and patients after the transportation. It talks about also the fact that the patients were assessed. It's basically an overall report. It talks about generally the risks that were there and what was done by who. Basically is that. Also, added to...
How many pages are they?
They are 392.
And how are they going to be admitted into evidence?
The documents, the witness referred to them in her evidence in chief. She said, for example...
No, I don't want you to say anything about the witness's evidence.
Yes.
I want the description, the nature of the documents for you to describe, that's all.
Yes, most of them are official documentation. They are departmental reports. There is...
I think what we should do is this. I think the documents must be given to advocates in Kuchana. And over time, you must try and, with this junior, systematize the documents and give them ELA numbers, which is the system we are using to admit documents. And at some point, we'll have to see what we make of them. Documents are not evidence in themselves, as you know. They may be valuable when evidence is tendered. So for now...
If I may, Justice.
No, you may not until I finish. For now, you will hand them over to Advocate Nkuchana. He must systematically look at the documents, and then let's give them a serial number so that we can refer to them. Only then might they become valuable. What do you want to say?
I wanted to say, Justice, when we left on Monday, during the course of the proceedings, the witness made a request to go back, look into her documents and emails. That request was granted. These documents are being handed in line with that arrangement.
Very well. There is a system in which we hand in documents. I've just told you about it. So give them to the evidence leader, and they will, and Ms. Hina, and they will look at them, make of them whatever it is, and then give them serial numbers so that we can ultimately read them into the record if it becomes relevant. Okay.
Thank you, Justice.
Thank you. Ms. Harson.
Thank you, Justice. Good morning, Ms. Mhlangu.
Good morning, Council.
We left off yesterday with your response to a letter from SADC dated 26 November 2015. If we could just return to that letter, we dealt with the issue of hospitals and what the state of play was at the hospitals, but there are a number of other aspects in that letter that we didn't look at. So if we could just return to that letter, which is in file 1, and it begins at page 169.
Thank you.
And at paragraph 11 of this letter, there's a long list of questions that are posed to you. And the questions are quite detailed. They concern questions about the budget, whether the NGOs have been assessed, renovations to old hospitals that are required, and importantly, how the department plans to communicate with the families. You've seen paragraph 11.
Yes, I have.
It's common cause that these questions went unanswered. Is the reason for that because you instructed senior management to get the lawyers involved?
Good morning, Justice,
Yes,
and
good morning.
to the councils, family members present here, and the members of the media. With your permission, Justice, may I raise a concern?
Yes.
When I arrived in South Africa on the 10th, I was welcomed by the police at the airport, and at that time, I did not take it serious. They told me they were from crime intelligence. Yesterday, in my house, as I was perusing through documents, there was a drone hovering above my home. I do not know what to make of this, and I do not know why I'm being harassed, because I came here voluntary, and there was no reason for anyone, and there's no reason for anyone to harass me, because I am committed to work with government to ensure that the families find closure. I thought it's important for me to alert you of the concerning developments around me and within my family. Thank you.
Well, at the airport, what did the police do? What did they say they were there for? Did they?
Firstly, there was an unusual passport check when we come out of the plane. And as I was going through in the first batch of people who came out of the plane, and passports were being checked just before you start walking in the airport building. And so something said to me, there's more to this. After I picked up my bags from the carousel, concerned, 2 police officials approached me. They said they were from crime intelligence, introduced themselves, showed me the police cards. They said to me they were sent by their bosses. Reasons explained as to why. Actually, I'm not sure what were the real reasons. But as I'm saying, I did not take note of, I just thought probably they are doing their work. I did ask them how did they know I was in the plane, because I didn't do traveling arrangement through any traveling agents. I did them directly with the airline. But they didn't answer me, and I did not expect an answer because they said they're from crime intelligence. But when the drone was hovering above my house yesterday, I started asking myself questions.
What kind of drone was it, and could you assess what was the source of the drone?
I mean, drone is like something that flies around, probably looks like a bigger, whatever. I've seen a drone, I just don't know how to describe it, but I know how it looks. It was hovering around the house, and someone observed it, the security observed it, and after a circling a couple of times, and it moved away from the house.
So there's a known electronic drone hovering over your home. It wasn't just the sound of a drone, but
no, there is a drone. There was a drone. There was a drone. Yes.
And have you managed to gather any more information about its source and why it was over your home?
No, I have not. I thought I must raise it formally because, and I did inform the MEC for community safety about it. But I think that as a chair of the arbitration, I thought it's important for me to alert you of the developments around me. Thank you.
I've assured you before, I'm deeply concerned about your safety and your ability to be able to give evidence so that we can go on with our work. Counsel for the state, could you be useful at all? I'm thinking of asking you and your attorney to inquire from the Police General who was here present, whether they are aware of these developments and what they might mean. Is that something that the state can do?
Thank you, Justice. For the record, we've been informed that the General Johnson is on retirement, but will make inquiries with the relevant officials and try and gather some information as to the activities which are said to be taking place. And
with General Johnson, who came to testify here?
We have been informed that he is now on retirement, so he's no longer in the service. So there are other officers within the SAPS that the department will make contact in order to ascertain the activities which are being said to be taking place, in order to ensure that safety is provided in these circumstances.
But would you ask them to find an explanation for the specific complaint raised by Ms. Mahlangu?
We will do so.
We'll do so, and hopefully if you could report to us at the very latest tomorrow morning so that we know exactly what is available, what is known, and what the police activity means.
We will take all effort to give a proper report.
Thank you, Counsel.
Thank you.
Ms. Hassan? Is there anything else you want to say in this regard, Ms. Mahlangu, before we continue with the cross-examination? If you remember, a question had been put to you, but before you answer, is there anything else you want to say in the light of the request I've just made to the State Council?
I am happy with your action, Justice Moseneke.
You are happy.
Thank you.
Very well. Thanks. The question was in relation to page 169 and the letter written to you by the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and Council had a few questions about the questions in the letter.
I'll repeat the question
yes, please do.
For the witness's convenience. The question was to you that these requests for information and other questions in paragraph 11 were not answered. That is now common cause. And it's because you instructed senior management to get the lawyers involved. Isn't that so?
Thank you very much, Counsel. Justice Moseneke, may I put it on record that throughout this process, I did not instruct officials not to work with all stakeholders who had interest on this matter. On this email concern that the Council has raised with me, in looking at some of the documents that the Council was saying that contain in this file that I'm requesting that it be considered for as part of the exhibit, is a trail of documents that indicate to me the correspondence and meetings between the officials led by the HOD together with the officials of the department, with SADC, with Section 27, and minutes thereof, whether the department agreed to certain things and the next meeting things are not being done. So, and also to state that part of what also I'm presenting here is that you'll see in the preceding email to this is that there's a meeting that is requested to discuss these matters supposedly on the 30th of November. And in the trail of email, you'll also see that I was prepared to attend that meeting to discuss these matters. However, it clashed with the legislature sitting, and again, there is in this file a speakers list which demonstrates that I was going to speak twice in the legislature on that day, and therefore it's important I brought this exhibit to demonstrate a willingness on my part to have been part of that meeting to look at these issues contained in this email. However, due to legislature commitment, I could not attend the meeting. And at no stage, and I'd like to repeat that, did I say to the officials, please do not work with stakeholders, because in the HIV and AIDS program, we're working with all stakeholders, even those that were not part of the AIDS Council initially. Thank you very much.
Okay. You've answered only one part of the question, to deny that you instructed anybody to do anything. But when we dealt with the letter on Monday, the letter, the wording in the letter was, please get our lawyers involved. Take leadership. These NGOs are dishonest. So what I'm saying to you is that the reason the questions went unanswered was because you did say to your officials that these NGOs are dishonest. In other words, don't work with them. And you copied your lawyer in that very email.
Through you, Justice, again. This communication was internal in the department in the course of work as we're engaging with the department, particularly the officials. And part of the reason why the lawyers will be involved, because throughout the processes of at least where I was aware of, and in my engagement with the HOD in the main, is the involvement of lawyers from Section 1027 in formal meetings. So therefore, when we engage with Section 20, or the HOD and the team engage with Section 27 and the lawyer come into the meeting, and I thought it was necessary for us in whatever we do so that the lawyers that are working with the department get notified of what of the communication between us. And when I asked the officials to take leadership, it was not to set them and to say, go and do illegal and wrong things. It was simply to say, we must demonstrate our ability to lead and to ensure that issues that need to be resolved are being resolved, not to skate around the issues. And that is really my honest and my genuine answer to the matter, as you are interpreting the communication to mean that I said the officials should not work with the NGO. That will be simply to the contrary of the view I hold about NGOs.
So the letter wasn't from lawyers to you. That letter was from a civil society organization involved in the field of mental health. Isn't that so?
Counsel, I was just I gave the context on how
I just want to answer that letter. So it's not about other circumstances and what you've done elsewhere. This letter came from a civil society organization, not from lawyers. Do you agree?
Through you, Justice.
Yes. Let's get back to what we did by the time we adjourned.
Yes.
Listen to the question and try and, in fewest of words, try and engage the question, answer it. We can't prescribe the answer, but we can insist that you at least answer the specific question. That will allow us to be able to move on. So please listen to the question and just come to it as briefly as you can. It may, at times, Ms. Matlangu, when explanation may be necessary, at the times when it would not be necessary. So just listen to the question and try to engage with it. You can be sure there'll be many others that will come. For you two, it's better to keep them, as they say in Swahili, body in body, piece by piece. So just take it that way, step by step. It will be much easier. Counsel?
Thank you, Justice. Do you agree that that letter was sent to you by a civil society organization, not lawyers?
Yes, the letter was sent by civil society counsel, and I would like to, again, through you, Justice.
Yes, she's going to come back and say, but why did you say this? Then you explain that, and so on. So if you try and explain it all, you're really inviting even more questions, and we're making little progress.
Okay.
Letters from civil society, yes, and then the next question will follow, inevitably.
Thank you.
Is it your position that you were willing to engage with civil society organizations and that you were not distrusting and dismissive of them? Is that your...
Thank you, Counsel. No, it's not my position. As I said, in the interaction in the emails, I was committed to attend some of the meetings, but due to other commitments, I couldn't.
Were you distrusting of the organizations?
I had no reason to distrust anybody.
And what is the name of the lawyers that you asked to be involved?
I think
in that email?
On this particular instance, I think it was Ngabesha Madlanga. I think it's the name of the law firm.
Are they private attorneys?
Yes, I think so.
So you use private attorneys rather than the state attorney, is that so?
We use both state attorneys and private attorneys on different matters of the department.
In this matter, you use private attorneys?
I think on some matters we use private attorneys, and
in
on
this
others,
matter?
I don't know how many other lawyers or other people that HOD consulted, but I think on the specific correspondence that you're referring to, it would have been the private attorneys concerned.
Private attorneys. And that would have come at a cost to the department, isn't that so?
Yes, of course.
Yes. And on Monday, you told us that one of the cost-saving measures of the department related to litigation against the department.
Yes, indeed, I did say that.
Yet you spent public resources in this matter in order to avoid answering the questions in paragraph 11 of the letter, isn't that so?
I do not agree with your assertion, Councillor.
Do you know what it cost to engage the lawyers?
Well, I wouldn't be aware. The HOD and the Chief Financial Officer would know the real cost. I do not get involved in procurement processes.
We'll return to the issue of procurement in a moment. If we could look at the termination of the contract. Whose decision was it to terminate the contract with Life Esidimeni?
Through you, Justice Museneg.
Well, currently, the Life Esidimeni arbitration hearings are taking place in Parktown in Johannesburg, where former Gauteng Health MEC Fudani Mahlangu is testifying for day 2. Of course, we'll get back to that as soon as we get our trans-efficient beat. Let's have a look at our question of the day. Of course, we have been asking you, how do you remember Hugh Masekela? Please send us your comments on @SABC Newsroom. We have been having a look at some of the tweets coming through, many sending their condolences and tributes to not only the man that he played with regards to his role in music, but also the man that he was, and describing his personality. We do know that for 30 years he was in exile fighting for freedom here in South Africa. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have been coming through. This one says from Atini, I will be playing his music the whole day at work. Of course, it is a sad situation. At the same time, many seem to be celebrating the music that will always live on through Bra Hugh, as he was affectionately known. Lechasa says Hugh Masekela was a great legend. He's gone too early, but he cannot be easily forgotten. Robala Gahotso Mzwandile says his voice, the way he performed during the Cape Town Jazz Festivals, he is a golden trumpeter of Mzansi and the world, very friendly and fond of people. And he definitely was. He was definitely a man that lit up the room, that was always smiling, always laughing. And many also remember hearing the echoes of his laughter just after interviews. This one comes from the great saying Esidimeni. Of course, that is one of Hugh Masekela's songs that we have heard. Michael says, as one of the greatest trumpet pioneers, Bra Hugh has run his race and his history will never be forgotten. Indeed, it will never be forgotten. It will continue to live on. Quincy says, oh, what a loss, Bra Hugh, what a legend, and he will remain a legend. I love the song. Mwana Mwai, and may his soul rest in peace. We've also been running a poll this morning, and our poll is with regards to the Eskom inquiry. It went well into the early hours of this morning with Anoj Singh taking the stand. And today we're asking, is the parliamentary inquiry actually going to get to the bottom of governance failures at Eskom? We do know that Masekela Koko is set to take the stand today. Let's have a look at the votes. There are just over 200 votes this morning. 51% of people contributing to our poll say yes. 49% of you are saying no. #SABC News, #Eskom Inquiry. Let's have a look at some of the tweets behind those numbers. Lechasa says Parliament is working hard to uproot corruption. Larato says Zuma is at the bottom of it all and eventually they'll get to him. Atini says, opinion, yes, there's a new sheriff in town and that is Cyril Ramaphosa. Well, is he doing a queen sleep? We don't know. Ikona says they will do everything in their power this time around their jobs, especially those who were suppressed. Having watched most of these committees, I've seen it all. The wheels are rolling. Another one coming in from Lekhas is saying, Aish, Singh is a professional liar, but opposition parties realize that he is a liar. I wish Mr. Singh could be sent to a Hosi Mampuru prison. Well, indeed, we've also been having a sports question. We're asking you, are SuperSport United suffering a CAF campaign hangover? Kendra will be taking us through the sports in just a bit in this hour. So that is the question of the day that we have posed to you. And we have also been having a look at some of the tweets that have been coming in. Let's see, I think some of the players are not understanding Eric Tinkler's tactics. I don't know. Is it the coach? Is it the players? Michael says, not really. I personally think that SuperSport FC players are not showing the same respect, hunger and commitment under Eric Tinkler like they did under Stuart Baxter. Soccer players tend to do that under a new coach. Eric must come out of his shell and stamp his authority and all shall be okay. Nakhasa says SuperSport cannot be trusted. It looks like it is suffering a slow death. It's trustable. Well, indeed, that is our question, poll and sports of the day. Let's have a look at one of our top stories, as we know that the inquiry is set to get underway this morning. Former Eskom acting CEO Masekela will appear before the Eskom parliamentary inquiry into his state capture. Koko's appearance comes after the utilities' former CFO Anoj Singh gave evidence yesterday.
Anoj Singh faced a tough grilling from lawmakers.
For the last 6-7 hours, all we've heard from you is, I don't know, ask so-and-so, these are the facts, I don't have any other facts. You've only been in the job for 2.5 years and you can't remember anything.
So I think with all due respect again, the one area that I said that it was difficult for me to respond to the questions was relating to the Horong transaction. The rest of the transactions that I was asked to prepare on, I think I've been able to provide a quite sufficient detail in terms of the analysis of the transactions that was requested.
Singh was also grilled on the 1.6 billion rand guarantee given to Degeta, a Gupta-linked company. Singh denied any friendship with the Guptas and their associates, and even denied they sponsored a trip to Dubai.
To whom is that invoice? It does bear your name, but if you look down there, it is addressed to?
Referring to company, then it's Sahara Computers.
Now, why would that invoice be directed to Sahara Computers and not to your common acquaintance?
So I'm not aware. I don't know.
Lawmaker after lawmaker pleaded with Singh to come clean and expose the web of state capture. He stuck to his line that he knew nothing and was prepared to fight corruption. And in the end, a half-hearted apology.
To the extent that we have, or I have, in some way, shape or form contributed to the downfall of Eskom. I do apologize sincerely, not only to the committee, but to the citizens of the country by and large, but I have tried to do my best.
Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
The Finance Minister, Malusi Gigaba, has thanked Anoj Singh for stepping down from Eskom. Gigaba says it's a new era for embattled state-owned entities, in Eskom specifically. He says he's confident another disgraced leader, Masekela, will do the same. The Finance Minister was speaking from the World Economic Forum in Davos. Anchor Francis Hurd started by asking him about the importance of the annual World Economic Forum meeting. Well, Eskom's head of Capital Prish Governor has also resigned. The power utility made the announcement this afternoon. But let's cross back live to the live Esidimeni arbitration hearings where former Gauteng Health MEC Kodani Mahlangu is testifying.
The second thing is, of course, these documents should have been done yesterday. The day we adjourned, we agreed that it would be done, and they get handed to council 5 minutes before we start. We had a whole break yesterday to facilitate that. So I'm not lightly going to stop the hearings now when we had a day in which these things could have been done and served timeously on all the parties. Shall we proceed?
Thank you, Justice. Ms. Mahlangu, my question was in relation to the reason for the termination of the contract. Let me try to make it a bit easier for you. You say that the reason for the termination in your evidence in chief was twofold, and you'll add if there's anything I've left out. One is to comply with the policy of deinstitutionalization. Is that right?
Yes, I stated 3 reasons here.
Pardon me?
I'm saying I stated 3 reasons.
Well, and one is deinstitutionalization?
Absolutely.
Yes. The other was costs, that you needed to cut costs. Is that so?
Yes, it is.
And what is the third reason?
Was the concerns raised by the Auditor General.
And what was the concern raised by the Auditor General?
As I said in my statement through you, Justice,
yes,
that the Auditor General, when they take the sample of audit items that they audit in any department, they will say this contract and that contract is not in line with the public supply chain regulations which are coming out of the Public Finance Management Act. Therefore, if the department does not do anything about it, it is likely to end up in findings by the Auditor General if you're not doing anything about it. So it is in that context that I'm raising this matter.
Was the concern of the Auditor General that there hadn't been a tender?
Yes, all government contracts have to go through tender, through you, Justice. That is the Public Finance Management Act, and that is derived from the Constitution.
That's fine, I understand the law on that. Did you embark on a tender process for awarding contracts to the NGOs?
Well, the officials can answer those processes. I would not get involved in that. The law is very clear, through you, Justice, that politicians cannot and should not and must not get involved in procurement processes. You
have oversight, don't you?
Yes,
and
yes,
the
Councillor.
obligations in Section 217 of the Constitution bind you, isn't that so?
Through you, Justice, may I ask Council to allow me to complete my sentences or my replies?
Certainly.
Because she continues to interrupt me as I try to answer.
Okay, complete the answer.
I was answering the question on the role of politicians in supply chain processes, that politicians are not allowed, should not, must not, and must never get involved in any supply chain processes. In respect of following on understanding whether procurement processes have been done in any project, you can only ask, and when the answer in this particular instance related to the NGO, did you follow the processes, all the legislative requirements? If the answer was yes, in all the meetings.
So you asked and the answer was yes?
Yes.
And you are familiar with Section 217 of the Constitution?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Do you know now whether the contracts were put out to tender?
I don't know. I didn't ask.
You still don't know?
Yes, I didn't ask the
question. But before the
supply
decision was made by the collective, was that matter ventilated? All we could do is to tender and invite other service providers so that we comply with the law and the AG's concerns. Did the collective consider that?
Through you, Justice, once we've taken a decision and the administrative processes started, throughout the reports, when the officials were indicating, and it is in some of the documents that I was referring to that are in the document, that they say the transport plan is in place, the planning, the project plan is in place. This meeting will indicate we've looked at the NGOs, they meet the criteria, they do all of that. The expectation is, because these are not officials who started working yesterday, they have been in the system, they know the law. The expectation is that they should comply with all legislative requirements, including supply chain.
My question is, did the collective consider whether or not to place the contract or the service provided by Life Esidimeni to tender?
I'm not sure exactly about that aspect, Justice.
No, you give us 3 grounds for cancelling the contract. One of these is the AG is concerned about the non-tender of a long-standing contract.
Yes.
So the question is inevitable. It begs an answer. Did the collective, before making the decision, consider to tender the contract so that you invite more and other, maybe more competent service providers?
Thank you, Justice Moseneke. My role, or any role of any politician in any scenarios relating to that, to make a decision, and the expectation is as to the procurement processes, and those are the pure responsibilities of the officials.
But when they said to you, this contract has been here since the 70s or 80s?
79.
79. It's a legitimate concern. Didn't you automatically say, put the service to tender? Invite the broader public, and let's see what comes out there. Why is the only response to cancel rather than to tender?
And if, thank you, Justice, for your question. If you, just give me a minute just to go back to my statement when I said the initial indication of the beds that were going to be utilized was government hospitals, which were either no longer used or that were no longer in use, like the old hospitals where we have built new hospitals and all of that. That is the answer I gave on Monday. And I even said, in those, at the time, we were informed that most of the mental health care users from Life were going to be accommodated there. Then when the officials changed direction to then go to the NGO's direction, they indicated that the NGO's move was because they have been there are a lot of mental health care users who were already with the NGOs. And they'll either add patients there or there will be new NGOs. Well, as to the process of procuring those NGOs, I wouldn't be sure exactly how that works administratively.
Well, let's go back to ground zero again. We're talking about the tender. I'm asking, did the collective consider to tender in the light of the longevity of this contract, which was a legitimate concern? What are you saying? You say, did you consider that or not?
Justice, I would
or
not
are you saying we didn't consider because we're going to place them in other hospitals? What is the answer?
It was my understanding was that because we're going to place the mental health care users in other hospitals or within NGOs, as to how NGOs are procured, because they've done it before, I wouldn't know the actual details because that is an operational matter done by the officials.
I'm not sure still for my MEC what the answer is. Did you ever sit and say, let's tender, and bring back the answer no because we have other hospitals? Or did you simply say, we're not going to tender, we're going to shut it down, and what would be the consequence? Lead us into your reasoning, your deliberations, so that we understand why the decision that was taken by your collective led to 143 deaths. So we're entitled to understand what was happening in your discussions. Why did you decide to get the guillotine down when there are a number of options? Can you respond to that?
Again, Justice, may I say that discussions relating to any procurement decision, politicians are not involved in those processes, and I was not involved in those processes. And that is in accordance with legislation.
But did the collective, in deciding to shut down or to terminate the contract of life as Esidimeni, that's where council is, did it consider the option of a tender?
In the meetings where I was part of Justice, I do not remember us discussing any issues relating to tender as an option and all of that.
Council.
Thank you, Justice. Ms. Mshlango, are you saying, you said that the officials changed direction and went to the NGOs. Are you saying that it wasn't the plan to use NGOs at the time the decision was taken?
Council, I did say that the initial plan was to get mental health care users to a number of government hospitals prior that were no longer used. The numbers were going to go to NGOs at the time when I answered the first question in the legislature. The number was smaller than what finally ended up being in. That is what I'm saying, which is what I said on Monday again.
Okay, no, that's fine. So the plan was from the beginning that there would be some number of patients that would go to NGOs.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But it was far lesser than the numbers that we ended up going.
We'll get to the numbers, but for now, I'm just asking you about the decision. When the decision was taken, there was a plan. The thinking was that the patients would go to NGOs as well as hospitals.
Absolutely.
But the bulk would go to hospitals.
Yes.
And in respect of the NGOs, was that put out to tender to see which NGOs could provide the best service, most efficient, most effective service for the money?
Again, Council, issues of procurements and tenders, I would not be party to those discussions at all. The Public Finance Management Act is absolutely clear on how procurement procedures are done. If I through you, Justice,
yes,
if I sit in a meeting with officials and say to them, put this policy or this implementation decision through a tender process, and then tomorrow they appoint someone who may know me or who may know my family, whatever, then the allegation will be the MEC influence, or she said people must go on tender because she wanted to influence us otherwise, to appoint her friends and all of that. So the decisions around procurement, what you procure, for what purpose, in line with the mandate of the department, those, through you, Justice, are solely the responsibilities of government officials who are employed in respective of doing those kind of work. But
council means, didn't your officials tell you how they're going to procure the NGOs?
No,
how are they going to
say that,
identify them and choose them and capacitate them? Didn't they tell you that?
Justice Musaneke, what I was short in the file that I'd like to refer to, the checklist, I think I've seen it in one of the files that Advocate Ngutjana gave me. The checklist as to what are the criteria that are being assessed against the requirement of policy, those are presented to me to have been adequate requirements for NGOs to meet. Then the question is, then did you direct them to go and look for supply?
No, we don't have to go that far. So they told you that here is a checklist and these NGOs are good for purpose.
Yes, absolutely. And the documents that the council was referring to this morning that he helped me to source, and I looked around, and they talk about that, the identification of hospitals and NGOs, the involvement of different stakeholders. It will talk about the placement of a placement plan. It talks about transportation plan in respective organizations. It also talks about NGO budgets and all of that. So that's what I'm referring to. When you receive such reports, that gives you assurance at any given point in time. My assumption is I had no any other reason to doubt the information that I'm being given.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. I'm sure the advocate will take you there. Let me leave you with this one thought, which might save a lot of time and pain for all of us. Remember, you come at a time when we've had Mr. Musenogi. We've heard H.A.D. Manamela, Dr. Manamela, head of the directorate. We've heard the HOD. We've heard Ms. Anna Jacobus. And each one of them told us what your role was. And that's still going to be put to you.
Okay.
So every single one of them was asked very carefully what your role was.
Okay.
So when you answer questions, just keep that in mind. There are going to be many questions which are going to come back, and you're going to be taken to the specific things they've said, some of which I looked at this morning.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind, that there is a whole body of evidence and paperwork which relates to you and your role in the decision-making and in the directing of the project. Okay. And your answers should just keep that in mind, and that you are under oath, counsel.
Thank you, Justice. Ms. Mahlangu, just to clarify the point, are you saying that as you sit here today, you don't know if a tender process was followed?
I was assured all government prescripts and regulations are followed, and supply chain is one of those, which means it's simply tender processes.
And you say that the bulk of the patients at the time you took the decision were to be transferred to state hospitals?
At the
right?
time, and
at
things
the time
changed,
the decision
yes,
was taken.
and then things changed.
So that doesn't make sense of your second reason for termination of the contract, which you say is deinstitutionalization. Isn't that so?
On what basis, Council?
Well, deinstitutionalization, the policy, we've been through it a few times in this hearing, is about integrating mental health care users into the communities. Isn't that so?
Yes, it is.
And to remove them from a hospital environment.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yes. But you're saying at the time the decision was taken, the bulk of the patients were to be sent to hospitals?
Yes, indeed.
And is that consistent with the policy of deinstitutionalization?
Yes, that part is not consistent with the institutionalization, and I think that is why there was a ton of events to look at to use the NGOs in the majority. And again, bearing in mind what I said in my statement on Monday, or through the cross-examination, that I was assured that there were more than 10,000 mental health care users already in Gauteng that were already with the NGOs since then the Mental Health Act was promulgated.
Now, I take it you're familiar with the national policy,
Yes,
the strategic framework, the 2013 to 2020.
And the Gauteng one as well.
So if you look at that document, if we look at that policy, and it's in the record just for ease of reference, yeah.
Which page?
Sorry, Justice. It's in file 4. And it begins at page 1358.
Of course.
Okay.
Do you have it?
Yes, I do.
Do you have it, Ms. Mahlangu?
Yes, I have it.
So the relevant part that I would like to take you to is on page 1365.
Mm-hmm. Who can see me?
And it's at paragraph 12 of the policy. And what the policy says at paragraph 12 is that deinstitutionalization has progressed at a rapid rate in South Africa without the necessary development of community-based services. This has led to a high number of homeless, mentally ill people living with mental illness in prisons and revolving patterns of care. So what the policy is saying is that there's an inadequacy of community-based services for mental health care users. That's what it's saying. You agree?
Yes, I'm following.
Okay. And then at page 1369, it says these community mental health services will be developed before further downscaling of psychiatric hospitals can proceed. Now, given this warning from the policy document and the fact that the NGOs required strengthening, the decision to terminate the contract on the basis, and the one reason being deinstitutionalization, didn't comply with the principles of the policy. Isn't that so?
Through you, Justice, the point I'll keep making is that information presented to me at all material terms suggests that the NGOs had capacity to do the work. The NGOs had the necessary staff to do the work, and they were being monitored and supported by the department. Of course, post the placement of the mental health care users, it turned out that what was said and told to me in meetings was not necessarily the truth.
So you're saying that even though the national policy framework document is clear that deinstitutionalization has progressed rapidly, and it's been done, basically what the policy is saying is haphazardly. There hasn't been a development of community services before deinstitutionalization takes place. You were satisfied that that was not the case in Gauteng?
With the information at my disposal at the time, I had a sense that the team knew what they were doing. Moreover, I was working with qualified, medically trained people. I had no doubt, I had no reason to doubt the authenticity of their report, as well as what they'll say to me. We have checked this, we've checked that. So I had no reason to doubt or to disbelieve anything I'm being given.
So you say it was the officials who misled you?
Yes, because every information I present in any situation, I get it from the officials. Unless I walk into a hospital or a clinic, I find something to the contrary what I've been given.
Let's put faces to the officials who assured you that the NGOs were ready and well-resourced to receive mental health care users.
It was in our formal meetings when I asked for meetings to monitor. The HOD will be present. If it's not, Dr. Libete, as well as Dr. Manemela when they give report, and Msenochi as well.
So it would be Mr. Msenochi, who was a project leader.
Absolutely.
Appointed by you as project leader.
I did not appoint Mr. Msenochi.
Okay, we'll come back to that. And it was the HOD, Dr. Silibano.
Yes, in his absence, the acting HOD will be Dr. Libete.
And the HOD, Dr. Libete, and Dr. Manamela. Those four assured you that the NGOs were well capacitated and ready to receive mental health care users.
Yes, yes, Justice.
Did you scratch any deeper than that, besides their assurances?
Justice Moseneke, as I said, and I continue to say, at the time, I had no reason to worry much about the concerns. I did not have reason to be concerned about anything. Maybe let me elaborate to give an example. If someone said, or if one CEO hospital and say to me, we have so many experiencing a challenge in, or we're experiencing, what example to give? if for instance, the head of trauma, whether it be Charlotte or Christiane Paragwanath, will say to me, MEC, we're having so many patients we're seeing every day, and this is the impact, or this is the number of staff we have, and we're running services absolutely fine. I have no reason to doubt that information because they are on the ground, and I'm using that as an example. And I can use many, many others. Or we have challenge X and Y and Z and Q. Once they alert me with the challenges, I'll be able to act on those challenges and ensure that those things are resolved.
You know why Council took you to the National Mental Health Policy Framework and Strategic Plan?
Yes, Justice.
And do you realize why she took you to paragraph 12?
Yes,
it records in an official policy document that community-based services for mental health care users are not sufficiently developed. That's why Advocate Hasim took you there. That doesn't escape you, does it? Policy tells you NGOs are not ready to receive mental health care users. And you, on the other hand, tell us, I had no reason to doubt incapacity. Can you see the tension? You clearly can. I have no doubt.
Yes, Justice.
Can you deal with it? That's the invitation. That's the question.
Yes, I can see the inconsistency or the contradiction.
Yes.
However, the point is, when you are sitting with competent, well-qualified officials who've not been employed yesterday, who've been in the system, and frankly speaking, I had no reason to doubt their bona fides and the authenticity of the information I'm being given. When they say to me, we had a transport plan, and this is how the patients were transported. This one went with their own transport. This one was transported by EMS. I had no reason to doubt that up until I'm told a contrary information by the ombudsperson who says, well, they were not transported by this, but were transported by this. So in the absence of any contrary information given to me, I would not be in a position to doubt the information that I'm being given.
You might miss the point, MEC. The inquiry at this stage is about when you made the decision as leader of the collective. Did you have regard to the policy framework that says community-based services are not adequately developed?
Yes, I was made aware, and also it was indicated to me that MEC were doing everything we can to make sure that indeed we strengthen the NGOs, there's training that is happening, and in all of that. That was continuously indicated that staff has been trained, the NGOs have been trained in number of requirements that they need to comply with, including the care to the patients.
And what about the letters from SADC? They wrote to you and said, we've checked the hospitals, and there is no capacity in the hospitals. Remember where we ended on Friday?
Yes, on Monday.
On Monday?
Yes, Justice.
SADC wrote to you and told you there's no capacity. And blow by blow, every hospital that your people were relying on, and you said, call our lawyers. They are dishonest. That's really what the advocate is talking to you about. And I know you can, and please deal with it.
Justice, any correspondence that I will get or I receive via email or by being delivered in my office, whether I had seen it or have not seen it, but we ensured through my office and myself that every correspondence is sent to the HOD for action, meaning that because I am not the administrator, for these things must be responded to by the HOD. And in some of the documents, there's where the HOD is responding to those concerns and to the issues, assuring, and when I read the document, it assures me that this has been done, this has been done, this has been done. And in the absence of politicians, their responsibility is defined to a certain extent. And administrative responsibilities are being done by professionals, by people who know the law and the framework of the existence of and the mandate of the department concerned.
Ms. Mashango, you know, SADC writes to you and tells you of the dangers. Council will go to many other people who have done that. Here are red lights flashing. There's no capacity for mental health care users. And why is that an assurance that everything is in order for Life Esidimeni to be shut down? I don't understand that. You get my difficulty. Professionals warn you there are difficulties at hospitals you rely on. Policy framework warns you community-based services are not well developed, and you still decide to shut down Life Esidimeni. That calls for an explanation.
Justice Mosenek, the same professionals I work with say to me everything is well. So, and I think it's important to really for us to understand my role and of any politician in any of a government executive as well as that of administrative processes in any government department.
Thank you, Justice. Ms. Mahlangu, your response regarding your role as a politician and letters that are sent to you, are you saying that there's no point writing to you? That the public should not engage you directly?
When the sorry.
Yes, you can answer that.
No, you can finish, sorry. Sorry for interjecting.
The question is, are you saying that the public should not write to you and engage you directly because you are merely the politician?
Thank you, Council. When the public writes to me, which I always encourage at all material times in any department where I've served, I'll take I'll refer the issue to a specific official, or if it's a clinic, I'll ask the clinic head to deal with the matter and provide the telephone number of the person concerned and encourage the person, please call me back if indeed you continue to encounter a problem. So in resolving the problem, I would not resolve them myself personally in terms of going going to the pharmacy and taking the medication. Instead, I will make sure that if a person complains about medication, those issues are resolved, specifically relating to the concerns you are raising. Each correspondence I receive that I have knowledge of and that I've seen, I had referred those correspondence to the HOD, who's the head of department. HOD, please, please, please. And the please, please in some of the emails suggest that I was appealing that for agency, that the issues must be attended to as soon as possible.
Are you saying that your response to the SADAG letter and the concerns was a request to the officials to address the concerns?
Absolutely.
And the lawyers were required for that?
Council, I explained the angle of the lawyers.
Okay, so you say the lawyers were required in order to engage with civil society?
I did say to you, Council, through you, Justice Moseneke, that things, the way things were working in the department, it became difficult to understand what is going where and how. For instance, there is a copy of SMSs I found yesterday as I'm trying to search for answers of some of these things, particularly the email that refers, which I said, these NGOs are dishonest. This is a context. So in engaging with this process throughout, and I think there's a trail of email, you'll see it in the files that is still to be considered. You get an email today, someone replies. You get an email today, someone replies. So in a day, there'll be about 3 or 4 emails. And then tomorrow, an email comes. Is a meeting confirmed, not confirmed, to discuss the said issues. A Saturday is a meeting confirmed, not confirmed, and whatever. So, and I see the correspondence between the HOD and Dr. Manamela and I can't remember the person from Section 7, SADAG, Section 27. And finally, the meeting takes place. Of course, I'm in the legislature. So in that process, there's a lot of issues that arises that sometimes became difficult to appreciate, in a sense that the SMS I'm referring to, for instance, which happened much later, and I beg your indulgence, Senior Justice, to explain. A WhatsApp group is created, And family members are asked to participate and give information in that WhatsApp group. Is created by Section 27. And family members are asked to say, please say the following to this, that the Department of Health did this and that. This is possibly what you can say in that as a response to this question.
Was this a WhatsApp in which you were part of the group?
No, I was not part of the group. I got to be informed about it. And for whatever you are wanting to raise as a concern in response to the guide we've given you, please send a message to this number. And probably the police can look at whose number that is and whatever else. And or the appropriate person can look at that. So when all of those things are happening and many others, it then becomes difficult to know who you're working with, who is genuinely working to support what you are doing, and who's genuinely not in the interest of what we are trying to do. So that is a context, Justice. I had no malice intention of whatever kind to anybody or to be dishonorable, particularly because here we're dealing with a very sensitive issue of when families have lost their loved one.
Fair enough. But let's go back to the issues that council has been canvassing with you. Have you thought the night before and yesterday, why would Dr. Silibano give you false assurances? Have you thought why, as HOD, he would lie to you outright?
I don't know, Senior Justice. I've been thinking about this, not only from yesterday. I've been thinking about this.
Sorry, let's hear the answer, please. Let's go quiet, yes.
This has preoccupied my mind for the longest of time. And even to date, I still don't have the answer because I have great respect for Dr. Silibano. And I regarded him as a highly qualified professional who became an administrator who knew what he was doing. So I had no doubt or any reason to believe otherwise whatever he was telling me.
It will be put to you later, and if they don't, I will. Passages from his evidence where he says, you drove the marathon project. You made the decision. He does also say within the collective, but you were the driver. And there were constant reports made to you about what was happening. Why would he tell an untruth like that?
The reports I have at my disposal, which were presented in meetings, were indicated that things were going okay, and patients or mental health care users are being placed in appropriate NGOs. And again, Justice, I had no reason to disbelieve the HOD.
Okay, let's take Mr. Msinogi. Mr. Msinogi says he pleaded with you. He wrote a letter to you. He pleaded about Baneng, which was in line to be shut down, and actually wrote to you, telling you it will be dangerous to shut down Life Esidimeni in that short time and to shut down Baneng completely. Do you remember that kind of communication from him to you?
Through you, Justice Moseneke, yes. I do not remember the said communication. Reason being, on the 3rd of February, because his email is written on the 6th of February, 2016. On the 3rd of February, I was hospitalized at George Mukhari Hospital. His email is written for the 6th of February. I was booked off leave, and we can check the records at George Mukhari. If you need to see the file, we can see the file. And on this, when I was discharged from George Mukhari, I had difficulties with my lower back. I went to Chrisani Parakwanath and I did an MRI. Again, I have a file at Chrisani Parakwanath, you can check that. And I continued to consult respective doctors at dealing with pain management at Chrisani Parakwanath, as well as Helen Joseph, a specialist there. So the email concern from Mr. Moseneke, I saw it when Advocate Ngujane gave me the document. I do not remember the email. However, I do remember a discussion in the meeting, I think it was March, if I'm not mistaken, that when it was, I think it was before March, because we extended the contract after that meeting. The discussion in the meeting was about there is no facility in Gauteng that can accommodate the children who are at Baning. It was discussed in the meeting, and we agreed that we are not going to move the children from Baning. On the basis of that, we also, in the same meeting, we agreed after discussion that we will extend the contract. Instead of ending on the 31st of March, it will end on the 30th of June.
Do you know why he would be? He says he was scared of you. And he said you were the driver and you were prepared to agree to only Baning being not shut down. Why would he be untruthful about your role? Do you know?
Justice, maybe I don't know why would someone whom I was working with, every day they come, or every time when we have a meeting, they come to meetings, and all of a sudden they say they were scared of me.
Did you see the passages of the evidence of Dr. Manamela about you?
I read Moseneke and I read the HOD and Dr. Manamela about fearing me and that I pushed them around to do things.
And you were the driver, you were the decision maker, and they had to take instructions from you. You saw that. She says so.
Justice Moseneke.
No, but did you see that there is evidence?
Yes, I saw that.
Why is she untruthful?
I do not know, because when we sat in meetings, presentations are made, and we take decisions. For instance, Baning was taken in the same meeting where supposedly people were fearing me. But they raised it in the meeting. And supposedly the issue of extending the contract was raised in the same meeting, and we extended the meeting. If it may suit you, probably we may call the other managers who sat in the meetings, who may not have been doctors, our communications team and our media liaison team, because they said throughout the meetings, at no stage did I sense or have a suspicion that people are afraid of me. I know myself to be a very warm person. So I am not sure when there's an impression that the officials concerned are afraid of me. I'm not sure, Justice. I can't describe that, honestly.
No, ma. If you want to continue screaming and you're identified, it might not be pleasant, please, because we'll have to ask you to leave. I'll really ask you again. She's a witness. She's entitled to give answers because she's being asked questions. So please keep your responses and anger inside you. We have to make progress. Counsel.
Thank you, Justice. If it would assist the process, I do intend to raise some of the questions you've asked with references to the record, and it might make it easier for the witness to answer, if I may come to that in due course.
You should go to that sometime. It was a very high-level question about why all these people would blame the former MEC. Yes. But there's a lot of detail there, and you can go to it, please. Thank you.
We were discussing the reason for the termination of the contract, and we were discussing the policy of deinstitutionalization and the warning in the national policy document, and of course there were letters to you. Did you say to any of your officials that no patient should be moved until such time as the NGOs are ready?
That was an assurance we gave throughout the meetings. Not only should that patient should not be moved till they are ready, that patient must have the records or the patient files, and that they must also be assessed by medical doctors, both the psychiatrists as well as medical doctors.
But that assurance wasn't given effect to, isn't that so? Because we know that they were moved without clinical files and to NGOs that were not ready.
Now I know that what happened, but in the documentation and information I have before me, and that was presented before me, suggested that patients were assessed, patients were seen by doctors, and I even remember saying in the meeting, actually one of the doctors, and I saw it in my presentation to Professor Mangope, that some of the doctors would have suggested that the mental health care users, there must be a phase in and out process. So there must be a weekend or to be taken to the new place where they're going to go, and they must be brought back to the old institution, and they must be taken back again so that they can be familiarized with those. I remember us discussing those issues and emphasizing to the officials, please attend to those issues.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the core question is, now we know the assurances were never kept. The answer should be yes, now we know, isn't it?
Yes, yes, Justice.
You're not trying to blame you now. We just want to get the facts on record. Now we know, whatever they promised you, it didn't happen because 143 people died,
yes,
and another 1,400 were under severe trauma. Isn't that the answer? Yes, we know.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. And one of the purposes of deinstitutionalization, we're still there, is also to reintegrate mental health care users into the communities, into their communities. Isn't that so?
Yes, it is.
Which would mean placing them close to their communities and families.
Yes.
And that didn't take place, isn't that so?
Yes, I came to understand that was the case. May I elaborate, Justice?
Yes. Very briefly, please. Yes.
From what I was informed, we moved patients from 3 institutions to 27 odd institutions. And that gave me comfort when they say, let me see, we've moved people from 3 institutions to 27 institutions across the province, but mainly in Tshwane. So I had no reason to believe that patients were moved concentrate in one place, because if you move, just common sense tells me that from 3 to 27, it's good progress. However, I do note that when I went to Sirman on, I think it was on the 18th or so of September, there was a family who came to visit their relative, and they complained about the distance, and I asked the officials to assist the family to relocate the mental health care user closer to Soweto. And the patient concerned, the mental care healthcare user said he is not wishing to go. He's happy with the company of the people that was there. So I tried my best to assist, to ask officials to make sure that family members and mental health care users are closer to families. Where I was alerted, Justice, that people were too far and the families needed assistance, I intervened and I asked the officials to move the patient back closer to their families.
Did you ask the officials, apart from that the individual circumstance where the complaint is made to you, did you then say to the officials, it would appear that there is non-compliance with the policy because patients are being placed far from their families? Did you then say to them that they should ensure that the remainder of the patients, to ensure
Yes.
that they are placed close to their families?
Yes, I did.
Not only in the individual cases that were brought to you.
I did ask officials from time to time, particularly post the September period, that can you please make sure that where families relatives are far from the venues, let's make sure that they are brought closer. And
You say in the post-September period?
Yes, maybe just let me elaborate.
I just want to understand before you elaborate, post-September 2016.
I'm saying good. Once I found that the 27 NGOs did not cater for the closeness, proximity to the families, I asked them to reassign and continuously engage with the families, particularly to make sure that they know their loved one has been moved from one place to the other.
In the post-September period, can you clarify? You're talking about post-September 2016.
I forgot now. Can you, I forgot the context.
That's why it helps if you answer the question when I ask it. There were many people who were placed far from their families. Reverend Mabwe spoke about having to travel 130 kilometers. Ms. Kulitz had to travel 100 kilometers. Jabulilo Flatswayo had to travel 120 kilometers. Did you know of these particular patients who were far from their families?
I wouldn't be able to know each and every one of them, Justice. However, again, I repeated to the officials, please engage with the families. Where there are great concerns, please make sure that though their concerns are taken into account. And I also was informed that Masiho was the only NGO accommodating geriatric mental health care users. Hence, every patient who had who needed geriatric care and who's a mental health care user needed to be taken to Masiho. That was what I was told when I asked about Masiho specifically, because I found more or less people of the same condition in that regard.
In any event, there wasn't compliance with the policy in that regard, correct? There wasn't compliance with the policy. Can we just agree on that?
I'm saying the aspects of the policy in relation to, and I'm saying the council, my impression was when you move people from 3 institutions to 27, you're dealing with proximity. Because even at Way Valley, when the mental health care users who were at Way Valley, the mother will move from Mamelodi to go to Germiston, and the transportation with a lot of difficulties. So I was under the impression that the 27 NGOs were accommodating and responding to those issues. However, I do know now that not everyone was accommodated closer to their families.
And that was in violation of the policy? Yes.
Pardon?
That taking patients far away from their homes and their loved ones was in violation of policy. And Council wants to know if that is so.
I suppose so, Justice.
It's obviously
You
so,
suppose
isn't
so.
it? It's obviously so. I mean, if you deinstitutionalize and you want to get people closer to their communities and to their families, and you take them 130 kilometers away, that is inconsistent with policy. That's quite obvious, isn't it, Ms. Masekela?
Ms. Mahlangu, you say that the other reason for the termination of the contract was cost saving. And we've had regard on several occasions now to a report by Professor Freeman. And I'd like you to have a look at it. It's in the exhibits bundle, Ella 2, and it's Annexure 4B. You've got it. Annexure 4B. Oh, sorry, 4A. brief report with respect to closing of life Esidimeni in Gauteng is the title. A. And after the 4 bullet points, Professor Freeman, he refers to research and he agrees that deinstitutionalization is a good practice. But in the second sentence, he says, however, deinstitutionalization should not, in capital letters, not be used to save money, as this inevitably results in people with mental illnesses being further abused, increased hospital admissions for acute care, and early mortality. Do you agree with that?
Let's first find out if the witness has found the passage. Have you found the passage you have been referred to?
Have you found the passage, Ms. Mahlangu?
Yes, I have.
So do you agree with that?
Can you allow me to read it?
I'll read it to you again. However, deinstitutionalization should not, in bold letters, be used to save money, as this inevitably results in people with mental illness being further abused, increased hospital admissions for acute care, and early mortality.
Okay, thank you, Counsel. I do not think that at the time anyone in the department thought that there was going to be loss of life. At least not me, not the HOD, not anybody. I do not think any one of us sat and said this was going to result into loss of life. Indeed, it is regrettable that families have lost their loved one. But it was not it's the unintended consequences of implementing the policy or the decision incorrectly. So, and the point is fair, and it's a genuine point.
You agree with the point?
Yes, but I contextualize my answer to that, Counsel.
He goes on to say the principle that should be adopted is that the money used for persons' care in an institution must follow the patient into the community. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. And I also, Professor Freeman also would remember, I saw him yesterday briefly on Monday. He will remember my conversation with him and the officials in the department that we should look at increasing or readjusting the stipend or the tariff that the NGOs were being given by government. That is something that we had discussed with Professor Freeman and the officials in the department.
And can you turn over the page and have a look at page 86? Right at the bottom of the page. It's under the heading, The Current Situation in Gauteng. About 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Professor Freeman says, from what we understand, NGOs that could potentially take on more patients are not currently prepared for additional numbers. And even if the subsidy was paid, there are questions about the sufficiency of the amount and the ability of the NGOs to take patients without adequate accommodation, available staffing, and so forth. What do you say to that? Do you agree with it?
Okay, so one of the things, Justice, that we, may I just beg for your indulgence to...
Could you just first say whether you agree?
Justice, may I please be given an opportunity to explain?
Yes, but it's a fair request. A passage is put to you, views of Professor Friedman, and you MEC Health. It's important for us to know whether you agree with the views. And then you could say, but we did it differently, but whatever. But for starters, do you agree with those views? Please take time and read them again.
Okay, thank you, Justice, and for giving me a moment. I think the first sentence, I fully agree with that. And then I come to the second sentence, I also...
and the second one is the one that starts from what can be established.
The NGOs will be requested to take on the community care of patients as far as possible.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know. Where are you
with
reading? Okay, the second sentence of that paragraph.
And from what can be established, it's anticipated that patients will be given disability grants currently at 1,420. As far as I understand this, and I think probably colleagues from the department can clarify this, Justice, as far as I understand how the social grants work, is that once a person is institutionalized, that grant ceases to be given to the person directly, but it is given to allocated to the institution where that person is. On the basis of that, then the government tariff or subsidy then tops up that kind of the funding that comes with it. And I know examples of my family members also who ended up needing to be cared for in homes. That was the scenario in that instance. It is possible. The additional amounts to NGOs, as I said earlier, that I had a discussion with Professor Freeman, myself, and Dr. Manamela, and I think Hannah was present. We were doing one of the workouts, if I'm not mistaken, it was Sirman. We agreed, or it was Sterkfontein, that there has to be an increment and looking at additional resources that must be given to NGO, because the tariffs that they were being given on a monthly basis per patient was not sufficient for them to care enough. And in addition to that, the issues of staffing, I also discussed it with Dr. Freeman, was that issues relating to staffing, particularly to professional nurses, it was important that government should consider employing those qualified nurses to be employed and then to be delegated.
I'm not sure which question you're answering now.
I'm dealing with this paragraph and I'm giving the broader context.
Well, no, you're not answering the question still.
I did.
No, you didn't. I asked you. I read it twice to you. From what we understand, NGOs that could potentially take on more patients are not currently prepared for additional numbers and so on and so on. I asked you whether you agree with that view of Professor Freeman.
Well, indeed, we're just coming out there of the live Esidimeni arbitration hearings. Currently, former Health MEC of Gauteng, Dani Mahlangu, is under testimony. Let's cross now live to Cape Town, where Democratic Alliance leader Esidimeni is briefing the media on a multidisciplinary program of action to actually deal with the management of averting Day Zero.
Municipalities in South Africa. When it comes to the question of augmentation, I'm often asked, and sometimes, I thought about it my own self. How can a city that is surrounded by water run out of water? Right? How can a city surrounded by an ocean run out of water? I want to clarify this. Desalination, regardless of what anyone says, is very expensive and complex. And the problem simply is, the city simply does not have money to be able to do that. Large-scale facilities can cost up to 15 billion
rands. 15 billion rands represents a third of Cape Town's annual budget. No city in South Africa can afford such a facility on its own. It would also not be right, because ultimately it is not the mandate of the city to do so. It falls outside its legal mandate. However, this particular government and the city, as part of our immediate augmentation plan, we're bringing on board 3 smaller scale desalination plants, which I visited this week. These are located in Strandfontein, Monwabisi, and the waterfront. Second to that is that our primary focus is about bringing Atlantis and Cape Flats aquifers online. This is, ladies and gentlemen, aquifers are the most immediate and cost-effective ways of being able to deliver water to citizens. They're far more effective in contrast to desalination. Therefore, water supply will also be augmented by transfers from private dams and water reuse. I'm here to tell you that in total, the city plans to bring 120 megalitres online by May 2018 as a result of all the augmentation efforts that we're bringing in place. I want to say this, that in fact the city will also look at even larger scale and aggressive augmentation projects to ensure water resilience in the years going forward, using a similar mix of water supply sources. We must ensure that the city of Cape Town never confronts this particular situation again. And the city will go beyond its mandate in pursuance of the most effective and sustainable augmented water sources. Fellow South Africans, and this is the most crucial part, it comes to the question of demand management. This is the water you and I use. I need to be absolutely clear here. The only way we can avoid day zero in the immediate term is by further reducing demand. There's no silver bullet. There's no clever plan. There's no clever device. It's about us reducing demand. Those are the short-term facts, and that's the reality we have to confront. Now, I know it's hard. Any form of augmentation and that plan will assist in the medium and the long term. But in the short term, it's up to you and I. It's up to those of us who, for those of you who run businesses, those of you who are in communities, those of you in your houses, we have to reduce demand. This is not a function of a lack of planning or foresight. It is, as I've communicated earlier, an outcome of what is an unprecedented drought and the lowest recorded rainfall in history. I want to remind you, Cape Town has come through droughts before, because what it did is that it took steps to manage and reduce demand. So, fellow citizens, the people of Cape Town, I now need your help. I need your immediate action. It is now that we have to do everything that we can. The only way we will defeat day zero is to use less water. This is for all of us. We have to do this. I want to say this, that we are part of this continent and part of this beautiful country. This is what Cape Town is. And Cape Town, for me, presents such hope. It's a beautiful city. Now we need all the residents to do what they can. I have been deeply concerned by the high users. And I want to say this, that the city has already voted to ensure that there's a punitive tariff for all the high users. And be assured that this is not a time for us to softly negotiate with you. We have to make sure that all users who ignore the fact that we must limit our usage of water, we have to go after them, and we have to ensure that everybody complies with the restrictions that are in place. It's hard. A lot of our citizens in this country have spent a lot of time, and they use buckets. They use limited water. This is maybe not about them, it's about the citizens who maybe have seen the limiting of water as an inconvenience. I know firsthand what this looks like. I know what it's like to now have to rethink old habits as to how long you must shower, how much water you must use for something. I get it. But we have to move beyond it being an inconvenience to being the fight of our lives. Because if we all do it right, if we all get it right, we can defeat day zero, but it's going to take everybody. The other day, got home, looked at my own son. I started to say to him, look, we all have to take big steps, big drastic steps. You can't waste not even a drop. We have to do what we can. Now is the time to do that. We have only got one last chance and one last window of opportunity. Hold on.
Can we please continue? Can we please continue? The leader is here to speak to the citizens of Cape Town about what the city is going to do about water. We will not tolerate disruptions, so can we please continue?
Let me say this. Hello, everybody. And I respect all citizens. And let me say this to everybody. It must take everybody. And I think we have only got this particular opportunity. Because I think as we all sit here today, we're not here to play politics. I don't know about you. We are here to make sure that we defeat day zero and do every effort that we can to fight this particular battle. And therefore, it will mean for every single one of us that we take away all frustration, we take away everything. Our own families must use less water now in this time. We have to make sure that if you own a house that's got more bathrooms, more whatever, in every bathroom there needs to be buckets. You need to reuse your water to flush the toilet. Fellow South Africans, fellow citizens of Cape Town, I think we can, I think we have an opportunity to defeat day zero. And let me, as I bring this, I want to say to all the families that have done everything that they can to reduce demand, let me, on behalf of our governments and the party and the citizens, I want to say to you, thank you very much for all your efforts. The great difficulty is that, in fact, that only speaks to less than 50% of our citizens. There's another 50% of citizens who have simply continued to use their consumption much higher than what they should be. And we will unapologetically go after these citizens. You see, indeed, every week between 2,000 to 2,500 water demand devices are being installed in households across the city who exceed their allowance. This program will now be accelerated. The restrictions that will be in place from 1 February mean that the city will only be able to use 450 megaliters of water per day. Let me say this. This means that every resident of Cape Town can only use a maximum of 50 liters per day. No matter where you are, whether you are at work, whether you are at home, whether you are in any environment, it's 50 liters cumulative for the day. It's not 50 liters at home, then 50 at work, and 50 somewhere else. It's 50 per day for everybody, regardless of where you are. This will ensure that our efforts bring the demand to less. But along with that, the city will also be introducing mechanism to throttle water supply through pressure reduction. Fellow South Africans, this in fact may mean that certain parts of the city may be without water for a period of time never exceeding 12 hours. I would ask that this is something we have to adapt to as part of defeating day zero. I must emphasize that if we all stick to a maximum usage of 50 liters per day, we can push day zero out. Every day that we exceed that will bring day zero even much closer. I want to ask you, the question for every child, for every parent, for every business owner is, what am I doing today to reduce demand? I want everybody to join us in a process and in all the hard works of defeating day zero. It's not just something I'm asking you to do, I'm asking our own family to do it. In fact, from our own home, we will now try and reduce our usage to 40 liters per day. It's going to be hard, but we recognize that it's no longer about convenience or anything like that. It's about ensuring that we defeat day zero. It's about making sure that on the day schools can remain open, hospitals will remain open. And let me say this to you, in the event that day zero was to happen, let me say, this is what it in fact means. The city, the province will ensure that, in fact, business communities, informal settlements, hospitals, we will ensure that that supply is met. But along with that, let me highlight that every plan has been put in place for the management of the day. Let me highlight the fact that as much as citizens are doing everything, our water supply is also shared between citizens and agriculture. And agriculture draws more or less the same amount of water from the supply system as the city does during summer months. And it must be noted that agriculture has already drawn down on its own supply for the year. We thus need national department to accelerate its effort to manage and restrict this demand if we are to defeat day zero. I'll equally so with members of parliament will take this fight to parliament with the Department of Water and Sanitation and its Minister Nomvula Mokonyane to fight to ensure that they fulfill their mandate. As I started earlier on, if day zero is to happen, and we're doing everything that we can to fight it, this government has been working hard in preparation to ensure that residents have all the information that they need and will have access to 25 litres of safe, clean water every day. The provincial government will work closely with the city to ensure that residents are able to access a daily amount of water. 25 litres of water per resident of the city if day zero is to happen. There will be identified public distribution points across the city who will receive their daily allocation. There will be a managed and, in as far as possible, in an orderly manner that we best know what to do. And I want to say this, I recognize that this day does posit a fear and an unease and a concern for many citizens. And we will ensure that all the plans as to how we manage this day are communicated clearly, are communicated consistently, and people will know. I want to say that the province and the city are now working on bringing on additional distribution mechanisms so that we can release pressure on public distribution points. And so, for example, which I want to applaud Helen Ziller in the work that she's been doing in this regard in liaising with the private sector, we will then begin to find ways to be able to go and deliver water to homes, to shops, etc. And I want to welcome the fact that there's been great cooperation from the private sector, and these discussions will be accelerated in the coming days. Let me say this. I want to assure every resident of Cape Town that we will do everything that we can to ensure that details are shared with you and what day zero plans are, and they will be communicated well in advance of this actually becoming a reality. As I've highlighted, it must be noted that schools, hospitals, essential services, and informal settlements will be still supplied with water as far as possible. The city will also seek to ensure that the CBD areas across the city are supplied with water so that economic activity can continue. But let me repeat this. We can avoid this and defeat day zero. If we do nothing, then we will hit day zero by the 12th of April, if not sooner. But if we stick to 50 litres per person per day, we can give ourselves a fighting chance. We can ensure that we can push out day zero and overcome this crisis. Going forward, this team and I will be holding weekly briefings on the progress that we've been making in local media and on our social platforms. Please also visit Defeat Day Zero website and our Facebook page for regular updates and pledge your commitment to defeat day zero. Fellow citizens, and I want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank everybody. But this is not This is a unique time. I started off earlier on today saying human beings triumph, and human beings have triumphed over great adversity. This is a natural disaster. This is our greatest moment. And I want to ask every single one of you, wherever you are, as a citizen, as a resident, as a tourist, as a business owner, as a family person, let us do what we can. And it is possible that we can defeat day zero. And when I look at all of the people here, I thank the businesses who've already committed, and I want to ask all of us, let us now, in this hour, stand together united to defeat day zero. And we can, and we will, and we shall. Thank you very, very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Musi. I think Musi Maimane has made it very clear. He's put the facts on the table. He's informed you where the city's plans are. He's also importantly laid out that day zero is on the 12th of April, and it's important for all of us to make sure that we do our bit in order to save water. Will we defeat day zero? Yes. Will we defeat day zero? Yes. Thank you very much. We'll now take questions from the media. I'll take 3 questions at a time.
Well, indeed, that was just the media briefing there by DA leader Musi Maimane, of course, with regards to the water crisis in Cape Town. Some of the key highlights there were that from the 1st of February, there will only be 450 megalitres of water that will be in use, 50 litres per resident throughout the course of the day. Let's cross now to the memorial service for former Botswana homeland leader Kgosi Lucas Mangope, and it is expected to start shortly.
You are. Mutlotlegi mtshwara marapo baswelwa ba ba tlotlegang motlotlegi Kgosi Mangope le ba lelapa baruti dikgosi bagolo baeng and all protocol observed phutego ya modimo e tlotlegang ke a le dumedisa mo leineng le le maatla la morena Jesu Kriste wa Nazareth. Bogolo ba modimo bo a makatsa o mogolo ka mafoko o mogolo ka ditiro bogolo jwa gagwe bo a iponagatsa mo ditirong tsa bana ba gagwe. Father, you have shown your face. Ra go itse jaanong re go itse le go feta modimo wa rona. Re go itse thata yaanong re itse gore o modimo wa bomang. Re a go itse jaanong gore o modimo o ntseng jang. Mo bofelong re re o modimo wa borra rona mogolo. O tsamaile le rona mo nakong e telele le gompieno o ntse o na le rona. O iponagaditse modimo wa me mo ditirong tsa rona tsa di dirileng a di direla ka botswapelo a di direla lefatshe la South Africa maungo a tswileng kwano a simolola fa motswedi fana a inama le lefatshe lotlhe la South Africa. Motsamaisa tiro, you'll agree with me ga ke o ra ke re, you know, this stage is a big stage. Tota ebile ne ke sa tshwanelang ka be ke go bua nna fana ke monnyane thata mo ditirong. 94 years ya rre ya esebile mo lefatsheng le boganka jwa gagwe mo mererong ya thuto e ntira gore ke feel very, very small. When I was approached to come and say something about education, ke ne ka itekola la bofelo ka iphitlhela e le gore ditlhako tse ke tla di rwalang gompieno di tlo mpalla mara ka gore ke a itse gore motlotlegi Kgosi Mangope ke mang le sa se dirileng mo botshelong ba me le matshelo a batho ba bangwe ka bona go tshwanela gore ke tshwanetse gore ke tlefa ka tla ke tlile ka bonnyane wa me nka mogeleng phuthego ya modimo ke tlo go bua se ke se buang go tla be go bua modimo through me ke rapetse modimo mo mosong wa gompieno ka re modimo mphe maatla le botlhale ba go convey the message gore le nkutlwe ka go nang ka be ke ne ka rago ga fela ka tla kwano ka tla go bua ne le ka se ke la nkutlwa ke rapetse ba gaetso mo mosong wa gompieno le maabane ga ke robala ke ne ka rapela ka romela mangeloi ka re tsamayang le go baakanya tulo eo ke tla ke fitlhile gompieno ke tlo go bua re tlo bua ka dikgang tse di bokete tsa the past ditiro tse di bokete tsa the present and ditiro tse di bokete tsa the future ditiro tse nne di diragala mo the erstwhile Bophuthatswana e ne e se ditiro tse o ka reng ga o di lebelela ko morago gompieno yana wa re ke ditiro tsa maabane therefore ga re kgathalele ditiro tse ke ditiro tse di na le impact mo matshelong a rona gone jaanong jaana le ka moso go tla nna fela go ntse fela jalo di tla affecta matshelo a bana ba rona ka go nna bao ba rutegileng ba itse gore history is very important with the knowledge of history you know the past and then you are able to offer a diagnosis for the future and then have a prognosis for a diagnosis for the present and a prognosis for the future. I'm sure from 1994 go fitla yana buka eo e ne ntse sa bonale yanong gompieno ra iphuthula bonale ra iphuthula ke buka e buang tse di monate ke buka e nka be gompieno yana re celebrate re salle re re go siame nako ne e fitlhile morwa Mangope mme ka nako ye jaanong ra celebrate la a contribution you dealing to the community at large. A visionary reo ke le nga ra eme mo godimo ga dithaba tsa lefurutshi a lebelela wa fitlhelela pono ya gagwe e fitlha ko bo America e fitlha bo Germany e fitlha bo England e fitlha mafatsheng a otlhe ya ka bophara a bonela ko pele he could see far beyond the horizon as I always say because he was standing on the shoulders of a giant. He was like an African hawk eagle. Ye leng gore ne o kgona gore ga e lefa e kgona go bona gore ko Gaborone go diragala e kgona go bona gore ko Francistown go diragala ka gonne he was a visionary leader. And then his qualities and the products that producing ka tiro e dirileng di teng di a tshela botlhongwa le bone ke bana ba tshela re a tshela modimo o re gaogetse ka gonne re ne re tsere go lekane mo go ra rona ga go no ka nkgaletsang mo motsong wa gompieno gore ga re ke bua ke re Motlotlegi was an orator and he was a narrator gore ga bua o ka batla go mothetsa letsatsi lotlhe a bua puo ya gagwe e le monate the choice of words and phrases were alarming. Rich language, poetic language. Yana e bua e kete bana ba rona ba ka dira jalo ba itse puo ba itse go narrata ba itse puo gore ba tle ba kgone go tsaya dikarolo mo di soaping tse di leng teng mo South Africa ba tsene mo di drameng le bone ba tseye karolo puo e ne le dijo tsa gagwe a kgona go bua, and he could appeal to the feelings, emotions and intellect of the people. Whether you are educated or not, he could reach you. And gape selo se sengwe se ne se makatsa ke gore le ga a seo fa re leng teng mara you could feel his presence. Gore he was present in his absence. Gore le ga a se teng o no mo utlwa gore o teng manyane moromang. Ga go twe president wa go bitsa re tlhongwa ke le go collegeng kwana. Ga go twe wa go bitsa go utlwa fela go twe go bidiwa re tlhongwa le ke emela ka dinao. A sampone ke re yes go bua kgosi go bua morena wa rona mo lefatsheng mona. Jaanong re tshwanetse gore re mo tlhomphe re responde ka moggo o tshwanetseng. Gore he was covered with glory, he was covered with grace. Gore o no utlwa gore fana go tsamaya motho a dukulogilwe ke serodumo, o utlwa gore motho ona ke motho wa batho ke motlotlegi wa mannete. He was an innovator. I'll illustrate very shortly. He was an innovator. He believed in research and renovation. Gore batho ne ba nyatsa ka gore ba itawa ka gore ha o tswa motswedi gore ha o tswa fela gore education system will be like this.
And just coming out there of the funeral service of Lucas Mangope. But moving on, and breaking news just coming in, the United Democratic Movement, UDM, and the Congress of the People, COPE, want President Jacob Zuma to personally provide 1 million rand before he brings his state capture appeal application. They fear he won't be able to pay the legal costs if he loses. That is where we bring a close to Newsroom. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Until then, bye-bye.
So the issue of waves is that don't underestimate yourself. You are exactly the cornerstone of the solutions we are looking for.
To go and intervene and make sure that people respect the Constitution.
Now, if drug dealers are paying political leaders, then you will never get rid of that problem.
We need to see detail that we will not see further bailouts.
Fidel, a towering figure of the 20th century.
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours.